Thank you, members. Are we able to make a start, please? Good morning. Welcome to the first Police and Crime panel of this municipal year. Please note that the proceedings at this meeting are being recorded and streamed live. Before we proceed with nominations for Chair and Vice Chair in line with the panel's procedures, I'd like to bring your attention to some housekeeping matters. If you wish to speak during the meeting, I would ask that you raise your hand and wait for the Chair to invite you to speak. In terms of voting, we'll be voting via show of hands today. Any panel member may stand for election as chair, and the candidate receiving the most votes from amongst those present will be elected. So moving to item 1, can I ask that you raise your hand if there are any nominations for chair, please? Councillor Pemberton.
Thank you. I'd like to nominate Councillor Hayden.
Councillor Hodgetts. Sorry, can I get a seconder? Sorry.
I'd like to second.
Thank you, Councillor Hackett.
Second the nomination.
Thank you. Councillor Hodgetts.
I'd like to nominate Nikki Chopak, please.
And a seconder, please. Councillor Ashton. And then moving to the vote, those voting for Councillor Hayden, can you please raise your hand, please? And just a moment while I make a note. Okay, thank you, Councillor Hayden. You're elected as chair. Moving to item 2, can I seek a nomination for vice chair, please? Councillor Toll.
Councillor Pack.
Do you have a seconder, please? Councillor German.
Happy to second.
Thank you. And just a quick show of hand, please. That's unanimous. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody, again. I would just like to thank you for your support, and I look forward to acting as chair over the course of the year. I would like to give my thanks and the panel from last year as well of all your support, and to my vice chair. If we move on to item 3 now on our report, we have apologies. Do we have any apologies, Jake, please?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies received from Councillor Lodge, Councillor Roger, Councillor Parsonage, Councillor Towell is substituting, Councillor Tyerman and Councillor Billings is substituting.
So, moving on to item 4, but before I do move on, I should actually say welcome to our new panel members as well, and if you need any support, I'm always very happy, but obviously you've got Jake as well. If you need anything in between meetings, please let us know. So moving on to item 4, which is our minutes. Do we have Anything we'd like to discuss within the minutes? No. Are you happy that I sign them as a true record? Second. Thank you. Any against? No. Any abstentions? Okay, we've got 2 abstentions. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to item 5, delegation of interest. Does anybody have any interest? Councillor German.
Thank you. The Prisoners Building Homes programme is mentioned in a few places in the report. I'm on the board of Local Partnerships LLP, which supports that programme. Thank you.
Caroline?
Yeah, just to let the panel know, I've changed roles for 6 months, so I'm now the designated nurse for safeguarding children in care for Cornwall, just for the record. Thank you.
So we're going to move on to item 6, which is public questions. I believe we have one, and Jake is going to read that one out.
So the question is from Mr. Joyce. Can the panel request that the OPCC and the force are clear on the use of powers in relation to illegal encampments as per statutory guidance for police on unauthorised encampments? A summary of available powers. Such harms, disruption or distress could include but are not limited to local communities being prevented from accessing or using facilities such as school sports fields, parks and car parks. So the answer is thank you, Mr. Joyce, for your question. The panel has sought assurances from the Commissioner, who has advised that the force and the OPCC are clear on the use of powers, and there are many examples where this is working effectively. It is important that where there is an authorised encampment which conflicts with settled communities, then this must be reported through the correct channels. The guidance is clear that this is a local authority lead with support from the police. The panel will consider adding this to the work programme to seek future reassurances and scrutiny if the panel feels necessary.
Thank you very much. Moving on to item 7, which is our Commissioner's update. I'd like to welcome our Commissioner. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Chair. Congratulations for being re-elected as Chairman for this year, and to Councillor Chopak, 2 experienced members now leading at the front, so thank you and well done. Welcome to new members who haven't met me personally before, and some old faces I see back in the room as well, and congratulations on those who got elected last year and are enjoying a new term of office in your local authority. Just to let you know, the update report, there's a couple of bits that I'll just flag in particular that I think will be of interest to members, and then if you want to ask me any questions. There's a couple of things that the government have done since they came to power, and one of them is that they did reinstate hotspot policing funding for the year, and they've also asked for action plans for what we're doing over the summer period in our towns and cities. Now, we're probably at the total forefront of that because we've always had an action plan for the summer. So I'm working with our colleagues in the local authorities and other partner agencies to be able to deliver a safe experience for everybody who's here during the summer. So just to let you know that is something that we didn't have before. At the previous panel, we didn't have confirmation of some of those things, but that's come about. One interesting thing that I've started to get involved in is funding night buses. It seems to be reducing the level of public order offences and violence that's happening while people are hanging around waiting for taxis or struggling to get home late at night, and it's really, really expensive as well. So it's actually helping a bit of the nighttime economy, and the night buses have been really successful. And I have to say the one that's had the most passengers so far is the Torquay to Brixham one that's been the most successful. But I'm starting to get feedback from young people telling me that they're really enjoying the experience of being able to go home safely, particularly young women, on a night out when they've been into some of our bigger towns and cities. And it's not very expensive to fund. So the aim is to try and make it a commercial success. But if you can get home from Exeter to Columpton for £3, you tell me if that's not good value for money for the individual. But I'm sure our taxis are are suffering as a result, but fundamentally it's been a real good success, and we've had some real positive reductions in some of the antisocial behaviour, violence and public order by getting people moving out of the towns quicker. The other important point to mention, I think, in terms of for members in particular, is I wanted to talk a little bit about that we've got drugs and alcohol as a priority in the police and crime plan. And there's quite a bit of information in the update report to let you know that we still work as a 5 force and 5 police and crime commissioner in the southwest to try and push those drugs out of our region. And we're still having some really great successes, but it's disrupting the county lines. In some of the performance information I've seen in the past, it's shown that we've actually closed down a number of county lines, and they're looking to change their business model because we're being so disruptive to them. So there's some real positive movement, I think, in terms of the enforcement around drugs. As you know as well, we've got theft in the police and crime plan, and there's been some fantastic examples of what the police and local authorities have been doing together and with the Crown Prosecution Service around shoplifting in particular. Plymouth has been pioneering the element where what is the minimum paperwork required to get a shoplifting offence over the line and through the court. And it's basically really simple. We want to see an image of them going in, an image of them stealing it, an image of their face, and an image of them leaving the shop. Now, normally, it's quite a paperwork process, but we've started to identify what is the minimum required to get some of these things over the line, especially for our prolific shoplifters. So that's been trialled in Plymouth at the moment. We've also delivered the UK PAC system, which some of you will be aware of, and particularly Torbay will be, because I've launched it in there first for free access to a crime reporting system for businesses. And it's not just for shopkeepers and retailers, it's for the nighttime economy, pubs, restaurants, anyone who wants to actually join up to that scheme. What it does is it enables the visibility of prolific offenders to those businesses. It enables them to report additional antisocial behaviour or issues that they've had with that individual. And we had our first prosecution last week of a prolific shoplifter on the back of that being launched in Torbay. So it's starting to work. I'm quite excited about it, and it will be available to all businesses across the whole of Devon, Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly. There is an existing police system called DISC that some of our shopkeepers use, so they don't have to go to the new system. But if they go to it, they will actually get a lot more action, and it's quicker, and they can upload all their evidence and their statements very fast. This is going to transform the way that our towns and cities are tackling antisocial behaviour and shoplifting. So I'd really like you to help promote the UK PAC scheme in your towns and cities. And finally, I will just mention, because this is the bit that I've been informed that Devon and Cornwall are, and this involves all of us with our local authorities, we are exemplars in the delivery of the Community Safety Accreditation Scheme, which is the CSAS powers that the Chief Constable delegates to people who are not police officers. So he delegates to PCSOs, he also delegates to street wardens, street marshals, beach marshals, and it enables them to stop people and ask for their name and address and things like that that they're allowed to do. We are apparently the exemplar in the country, and only 3 other force areas are even delivering on this scheme. And I think that speaks volumes about the level of partnership working that we've got here. It is our way of working. We've been doing it for decades, and the Chief Constable's already considering what else could he delegate, how else can more people be involved. We want to keep this area safe, and I'm just delighted that we're seen as such. I'm hoping to produce a film over this summer to interview a number of the people who are delivering that scheme in our communities, which will be some of your council's employees, and so that we can actually showcase the great work that we do. I don't believe the government at the moment understands, if there's only 3 other forces than us doing it, that this is a key, absolute important element of policing in our community. So I think we need to raise our profile around helping the government understand this is an option and an opportunity for more forces to be able to do that. And I'll leave that there, Chair, so open to questions.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Do we have any questions? Okay, Kevin?
Yeah, my question is regarding the night buses. I used to be a taxi driver in Newquay, and I know what it's like to ferry a load of rowdy people around town at night. How are the buses managing with that, and what is the regime? Is it a driver on their own, or is there somebody with them? How's that being managed?
Thank you, Chair. At the moment, I haven't had any reports to me to tell me that there's been incidences on those buses as they're going. There is a single driver on the bus. In fact, the one for Torquay is a young woman, and she was quite looking forward to driving everybody around back home late at night. So I think the atmosphere on the bus, I remember getting the night buses in London when I was younger. It was a fun thing to do, and you felt really safe. So, or you go to sleep, as one or the other. But I haven't had reports of any incidences so far.
Thank you. Councillor Loudon.
I thought I recognised you, Commissioner. Right, the serious point, page 28 of the agenda pack. So, section 10.9, and I'm rather surprised you haven't addressed this, which is Chief Constable's investigation. So, we now know over the last few days that Chief Constable Will Kerr is retiring. So, you were elected in 2016. At that point when you came in, you inherited Chief Constable Sean Sawyer, who his period was 2013 to 2022. He then left, and you then appointed Chief Constable Will Kerr. I'm not going to rehash the recent history around Mr. Kerr, but then subsequently you had to appoint Jim Colwell to the acting role, and then so that was in July 23, and then last November you then again had to appoint an acting, and we currently have James Vaughan continuing. So that's the current history. So two questions come out of this. I was listening to BBC Spotlight last night, expecting to see Ben Wolvin. He didn't make an appearance, interestingly. But you said to the reporter, words to the effect, I'm looking to recruit a new chief constable to make the organisation fly like it did back in the day. Given that you inherited Sean Sawyer, and you've then appointed Will Kerr, Jim Colwell and James Vaughan, when was back in the day as far as you're concerned? And the second thing is, you then also said to the reporter you were intending to recruit in the autumn. And I suppose my question is, why the autumn and not now? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. So quite a lot of bits and bobs to sort of explain here. So fundamentally, I would say that it's not my, I'm not pleased that we've been in this position in terms of having multiple leaders of the organisation, and obviously temporary leaders of the organisation, because they cannot really act as a full chief constable unless they are the substantive chief constable. They can't set the strategy and direction quite as they should. What I will say is, when we had the inspection from His Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary and Fire and Rescue Services, which would have been in 2022, and they identified the poor performance. Now, don't get me wrong, HMI have changed the way in which they inspect forces. They used to inspect them based on having good processes and good plans. Now they're actually inspecting on results, which is exactly the sort of thing we'd expect and want to see. I think it was quite a revelation that Devon and Cornwall Police has always seen itself as the innovative force, nationally leading, and it came to bear that there was probably a bit of lack of awareness of how they were actually performing until that inspection happened. So I'm talking about, at the moment, when I say back in the day, I mean it pre-HMI, this recent inspection, when we thought we were doing really well through processes and plans. But at the moment, we are getting to the point where we're performing really well, even though if you see my performance report, you wouldn't think that at the moment. But we're performing really well, and I'm looking for some good news to be coming out later this year, hopefully, from HMI. So I think we'll be in a really good position. And it's really come about under the leadership of James Vaughan since he's been here. He's been driving performance with such pace, with personal attention, and he's spoken to about 4,000 of the 6,000 staff and officers that work for Devon and Cornwall Police to make it really clear what is expected of them. It's really important, the tone that a Chief Constable sets. I'm not in a rush to remove James, but he is a retired Chief Constable who's come back to assist. So he does deserve a retirement at some point, so he won't be here for the long term. But I don't want to rush into a recruitment for a chief while we've got this strong performance focus and leadership that we're getting from James Vaughan.
Did you want to come back, Councillor Loudon?
No, I think that's fine. Thank you. Thank you for the answer, Commissioner.
Councillor Penberthy.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a few little bits. As your report you've just given to us verbally talks a lot about your partnership with councils. What's less visible in your written report is your partnership with councils. I just wondered whether maybe your written report could more accurately reflect your verbal report in future, because at the moment your written report seems to talk more about you and less about the system, and I think it's more important that we reflect on your role in the system in the written report as well. So I just wondered whether you could reflect on that with your team, because there were examples you gave that I thought were really important, such as congratulations on that community safety accreditation scheme. I know when I held the community safety portfolio here, we desperately tried to do it and basically got a no from the police. So it's really good, but you gave a lot more example there of working and how it works. I think if we're going to celebrate these successes, part of that is acknowledgement of everyone's part in it, and I think that would be just helpful. So that was just a generic comment. I thought it was really interesting you've put in something there about your submission of your delivery plan around safer streets during the summer, given that restoring pride in public spaces is a local authority responsibility. Well-managed environments, especially if you're talking city, town centre, are quite often things that local authorities are being really heavily involved in. I wondered whether it's possible for panel members to see your draft plan, just to see how that reacts across in all of our areas in terms of partnership working, because it could be that we've got some additional insight that might help in future. Similarly, there's lots of specific initiatives that you've mentioned in keeping towns safe. I just wondered, I know some of those are working in my ward, but I don't get to hear about them from the police. I get to hear sometimes about them from community groups. I just wondered about making sure that you're linking with councillors when you've got initiatives in wards, because I think that's really important. It was just a bit of a learning on all of those bits that I thought might be useful.
Chair, thank you. You make some really good points, and I wonder if what I'll try and pick up in my next update report is good practice that's happening across the patch. Because if you think about it, a lot of the time I'm not personally involved in the local authority work. It's happening at an operational level, and I'm either funding it or directing and supporting it to happen, but I'm not actually directly involved. But I'll pick that up to pull up some good practice that's happening in different patches. I know exactly the initiative you're talking about for your ward, and I think we absolutely need to get you a conversation, regular conversation with the ward councillors, because we haven't got that in place.
Both clear hold build and hotspot policing,
yeah.
we're not getting briefings directly.
Yeah, particularly clear hold build, though. I think we need to pull that in. I'm looking to try and use the approach of clear hold build when we go in how we're dealing with Torquay and how I'll be dealing with Camborne next. I think the approach is extremely good. When partners come alongside you, once the police have cleared, it's the long-term sustainability of it. But I'll take that point away, Councillor Ben-Berthy. No problem.
Thank you. I have 3 more people that's asked to speak. Mandy?
Thank you very much, Chair. Excuse me. I'd just like to go back to the conversation that Councillor Loudon drew to our attention about former Chief Constable Bill Kerr, unless it's midnight tonight, you know, don't know which way we're going. With regard to this, was there a golden handshake? And how much has this cost us so far, this whole process of not being able to have a truly substantive Chief Constable? Because it's the ratepayers paying, and, you know, is it fair? You've had to, you know, put up your precept. Would you have had to have put it up so much if we weren't having these incidents? And I just think that, you know, the public do have a right to know, particularly if it was a golden handshake or not, and whether this could have been negotiated earlier in the proceedings instead of having somebody on nearly full pay for 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, what I will say is by Mr. Kerr retiring, it does not infer his guilt in anything whatsoever. Just be really clear about that. He is still under investigation, though, for gross misconduct by the Independent Office of Police Conduct. And in my experience, this could go on for years. I'm absolutely disgusted by the inefficiency and ineffectiveness of the Independent Office of Police Conduct, and it's all I've talked about for the last 24 hours. I've written to the Policing Minister. I think the Home Secretary should scrutinise the body. In fact, in the legal circles and all the advice that I have spoken about, the word incompetence is what comes up. So what I will say is that I've made a very rational and pragmatic decision to agree with Mr. Kerr that retirement is the best option. He does have the interests of the people of Devon, Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly at heart, because he recognised how difficult it's been for me to support the organisation with all these individuals that we've had to have in to help. So he's allowing me, by retiring, to get to the point of a stable, substantive Chief Constable for the organisation, and that's for the benefit of all of us. So I'm thankful that Mr. Kerr has recognised that we are in a difficult place, and he is legally entitled to continue to receive full pay until all of this has finished. And I'm saying, in my experience, that could be years.
Thank you. Councillor German?
Thank you, Chair. This wasn't my question, but hopefully I can have 2. I just didn't hear a response to Councillor Ewing's question of, is there a golden handshake?
Mr. Kerr and I have mutually agreed an arrangement for him to leave, and I've said I've done it in a pragmatic and rational way. The information will be published in the Statement of Accounts next year if people wish to go and have a look at that, but it's not something for me to discuss today.
Thank you. Since your written update, the force has requested mutual aid, and that's been granted. And before mutual aid was granted, the whole of the front line of the force was reorganised to cope with the pressure that it was experiencing, primarily due to incidents in Cornwall. So would you like to update the panel on that, why mutual aid was requested and granted, and what's the ongoing situation? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Some of the elements of that operation I can't speak about, but I can, some of the things are very obvious. As you know, there is a large crime scene that's been identified in Cornwall that is requiring a lot of effort to even just scene guard the area. The level of what can I say, expertise. Some of the mutual aid we've brought in is expertise in specific types of investigations that we didn't have. The National Crime Agency is supporting the organisation at the moment, and I want to thank all the other forces that are coming in at a very busy time for themselves to offer mutual aid. It's largely investigative mutual aid that we've brought in, and until some of those elements have been established of exactly what we're dealing with there, it will be made public at that time. I know there's been some information in the media. We've got a huge forensic tent down there, lots of forensics officers. Obviously, we found dead bodies in that wood. We're just trying to establish how many there may be at this point in time, and whether we are aware of who they are or what might have happened to them. So we don't also know how long they may have been there, some of them. The other bit that I will just say as well is I want to thank the frontline officers who were put to 12-hour shifts, and often having to do a late shift rather than an early shift, or changing all of their personal and family plans. I know it's been really strain on the frontline officers, but when these things happen, that is the job, that is what they were signed up to do, and apparently it happens every other week in the Met due to their protests. Officers are put on 12-hour shifts often. It rarely happens in our force, but it's just unfortunate that they had to do it for quite a period of time, and I do want to thank those frontline officers and staff who have worked tirelessly to make sure that we're still receiving a service while other members of the force are really busy investigating a major crime scene.
Okay, I've got 4 more people, and then I'm going to draw a line under it because I think everyone's had their opportunity. So next on my list is Councillor Hackett.
Thank you very much, Chair. I've got 2 questions. Firstly, we are uncertain about the position of Jim Cornwall. That hasn't been clarified. He's held in very high regard amongst his senior officers. You know, I know him. His views are held in high esteem. Could you tell us what the position of his role is at the moment, please? And will he be reinstated?
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, just to say that the update on the Chief Constable position in this report was written before all the announcements that happened this week, so that's why it is out of date. Mr. Cornwall he'll be delighted to hear that from you, Councillor Hackett. He's been through a tricky time himself. He has been found of misconduct, not gross misconduct, so he is back in the force. He is the Deputy Chief Constable, and he's getting on with the job in hand.
Thank you, delighted to hear it. Now, in my role as lead member up at Torridge, I've been requesting that you come up and meet the councillors in Bideford because of the large shoplifting issues we have up there. And we received a reply from your executive assistant, and I'd like to draw your attention to one of the paragraphs. As we are currently within the pre-election period of heightened sensitivity, our office is limited in how we can interact with councillors. As such, it may be useful to revisit this invitation following the local elections in May. My question is, firstly, can you please revisit it? And secondly, my understanding is that you went up to Torridge and North Devon on 3 occasions and met with Conservative candidates for the election, all of which were not elected for the role at county. But that rather seems at odds with the letter there. Surely if it's heightened election sensitivity and you cannot meet councillors, where is your position in this?
Thank you, Chair. In my personal capacity, I'm allowed to be political. I do not use any resources of my office, though, to do political matters.
Okay, I'll press you on that because one of the councillors said that he invited you as a councillor, as the commissioner. So I would take that you were there in your capacity as Police and Crime Commissioner, and also in his Facebook feed, he said you were there as Police and Crime Commissioner.
Chair, if I may. This is just often mix-ups that happen because I am the Police and Crime Commissioner, but I won't have been there in my official capacity. Even though I may have visited the police station while I was there, I would be doing in my personal capacity, not in an official capacity.
Okay, gonna move on from that, if that's okay. So, Councillor Billings is next.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner, you had a very good question earlier from my colleague, Councillor Pemberthy, in relation to a specific section in the report dealing with good partnership working or good practice. I believe I heard an assurance that you'd include that section in future updates. But going beyond that, what can you draw our attention to that you've you shared this good practice with other councils? Using an example and going back to the public question we had at the beginning, in Torbay, Torbay's been able to lead with help from the police in keeping public open spaces free from those that act in such a way through occupation of that space that it deprives communities with that use. I'm sure councillors all round this chamber would like that good practice shared in their area. I was very interested to learn of the points that Councillor Pemberthy made in relation to Plymouth, and I'd like to learn there. What more can you do to share that good practice, and can you report on that in a future report as well as telling us about that now, please? Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. The way in which we do it now is through the Councillor Advocate Scheme, and we run 2 main seminars in person a year and usually 2 online. And what we do is we bring often local authority speakers to come and say how they're delivering it. We had a Councillor Advocate Scheme this week where we had Plymouth, yet again, Chair, Plymouth coming and speaking about what they're spending their serious violence money on to enable everybody to understand the types of things that are happening to address violence in Plymouth. Previous one, we've had one around antisocial behaviour where we had Rebecca Hewitt and her team discuss how they're using community penalty notices and community penalty warnings, and they are the exemplar, Teenbridge, around that. And I will say that that's now spread out a lot more across the patch. Because they've been using them very creatively for antisocial car drivers. They were using them creatively for people who were causing antisocial behaviour in the town. So the way to actually understand that good practice is to try and attend a councillor advocate seminar. I'm always happy to take feedback if they wanted to be done in the evenings, because they are at the moment done during the day. And largely, I also get complaint that we don't host it in Cornwall, and we tend to do it in Devon, but that's because more people come from Devon than they do Cornwall. When we've hosted it in Cornwall, we've had very low turnout. But I'm happy to take feedback on how we can make those arrangements more accessible to people who join the Councillor Advocate Scheme. But that's what I use that platform for, is sharing the good practice across the local authorities.
Just a point of information, Chair. What is it? South Hams, Devon and, oh my God, Teenbridge, West Devon and South Hams Community Safety Partnership, not exclusively Teenbridge. Just had to get that in there.
I must say, for a laugh, it's why I didn't say it wider, because I couldn't remember. Well, I think it's actually Teenbridge and South Dartmoor and West Devon.
Okay, moving on. I'm a bit cautious about the time because I know the next item we will want to really explore. But Vice Chair, would you like?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for my earlier election. Thank you for that. Just a quick question, and it's all around the police inquiry offices. I'm always a great believer in great news stories, and I still think this is a really good news story, and it's a bit disappointing there's only about 3 lines about it. But I just wanted to clarify, obviously you've put some figures in there around how the offices have helped or increased the numbers. So it's 2 questions. One is, have you noticed a drop-off on the 101 element because people are now going face-to-face? So that's the first question. And then my second question is more probably parochial, but I have been asked, when is Launceston going to reopen, and what are the, what have we got plans for the next year in the way of inquiry offices opening? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'll say it's unrelenting, the 101. The more channels you open, the more people come. So it's actually just increasing access and more people to come and report crime. So I think that's positive, because we need to understand what's happening in our communities. And I think by the fact that we now have more police inquiry officers, is really making a difference to people coming forward and needing a face-to-face contact rather than an over the phone. So no, we haven't seen a drop-off on 101 calls, but you'll see later on in the performance report, we're also not seeing a major abandonment rate on 101 either. They are hanging on because it's not taking long to get answered as it used to. So the performance is dramatically improved. I was delighted to open Cambourne's, refurbished and moved into the new bit of the station's front office the other week. I have to say it's a delight to go to Cambourne, and I've seen some negative media about it online, and it's one of the most welcoming places in Cornwall I think I've ever been to. Not to diminish everywhere else, but absolutely delightful level of partnership working going on there. This year at the moment, the only two that I had planned to reopen was Exeter City in the city centre and Exmouth when we were to build a new station. Both of those things are not going to happen at this point because to build Exmouth Police Station is going to cost me £6 million, and I'm not happy. It only cost me £2 million to build Liscard, and what we were building in Exmouth was smaller. It's just the costs have gone up so dramatically. I prefer, or rather find, another place to put the police rather than do that. So that's on hold. The second one was Exeter City Centre, but because we share a building with the council, the police officers and the local policing team are based in the council building in the city centre. Unfortunately, there's a worry about policy around people bringing in weapons to the police front office, and so I've been refused to open one by the City Council, unfortunately. I understand their challenges of not wanting their staff to be at risk, but it's meant that I can't reopen one in the city centre because I would have to move the whole policing team as well, and the cost of that would be too great at this point. So there's two sort of spots going. Haven't made any decisions at the moment about which ones. I know the Chief Constable's keen on Launceston, probably because he's been lobbied by some of his officers, and when our officers want them opened, that's always a good thing because it means that they want to be proud that they've got a police station that's like a proper police station with a front desk, and they find it really helpful. So I've got two spots potentially still this year, and we haven't made any decisions about that.
Can I just come back then? So can I invite you up to Launceston? Because obviously we have an existing building, half of which is empty. Thank you.
Okay, Gordon.
Thank you. Gordon Czapieski, Mid Devon. First of all, I'd like to compliment you on the night bus solution. Anything that helps transport day, night, whatever, and probably need to speak a bit more about transport generally. If you're getting a good service and a good deal, we probably all share in that, back to the point about cooperation with councils. But my question pertains to the recent announcement by His Majesty's Inspector of Policing about cooperation, I think it's liaison and cooperation with other forces, particularly with regard to organised crime, but generally, how are we doing with that? Do we have policies? Are we actively pursuing cooperation with other forces? It's another thing we might want to keep on the agenda going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, there was a recent inspection into serious and organised crime in the southwest. So a number of regions have had their inspections. They all haven't come out very well. The regional organised crime unit came out as satisfactory, but the forces, the 5 forces that support the ROCU and the staff are deployed into the ROCU from the 5 forces were left wanting and requires improvement. And I think that there's quite a lot in that space that we do need to look at a bit better. I'm the national lead for serious and organised crime for Police and Crime Commissioners. I co-chair that with David Allen, who is the Police and Crime Commissioner from Cumbria. And one of my tasks is to actually go out and see how their regional organised crime units and serious and organised crime is working in some of the areas where it's better. And I hear the northwest is good, the northeast is good. So there's something going on up north that I need to go and take a look at. What I will also say is we've only just recently had a substantive director of intelligence in the force. There's been some acting up positions, and that director of intelligence is the main point of contact for serious and organised crime. So I will be meeting with him shortly. He only started a couple of weeks ago, but there's a lot of work to be done in that space. What I will say in terms of collaboration in the region, though, we are one of the best regions that collaborates. Again, it's part of a Southwest Way, and we've got a number of collaborations that are outside of serious and organised crime that work really well. One is our rural crime teams. They are talking cross-force and actually capturing criminals who are thieving from our rural communities, and that's fantastic. I particularly want to praise Wiltshire Police for who's been capturing some of the people who've been stealing from our area. And so there is quite a lot of collaboration around that. And also, as a region, the collaboration that police and crime commissioners do, we have a reducing reoffending partnership where we bring all of the partners together to discuss how we're going to do that. And that's how our Prisoners Building Home scheme came about. So we are an exemplar in partnership working, but we haven't quite got to grips with the serious and organised crime after that inspection that's recently been published.
Okay, I've got Councillor Penberthy, sorry. Can you just make it very quick, please?
Sorry, Commissioner, I just wanted to reflect something back to you. I had previously signed up to be a council advocate. For some reason, I dropped off the list. I received an invitation to reapply recently. I applied and was told that I couldn't be on it because I was on the police and crime panel, so I wasn't able to attend last week's briefing. Since then, I know I've had an email saying I can be on it. I think that actually puts you in a massive disservice when you have asked us all to join. We've joined. In my case, I dropped off when I didn't ask to drop off, and then when I applied to rejoin, I was told no. Please can you be really clear with your team that any councillor can sit on this panel through substitution, and either you have an advocate scheme or you don't, because doing that is really not helpful to any of us, and it meant all of us on this panel potentially missed a briefing on knife crime, and I think that is really, really bad.
I identify with those comments as well.
Chair, I can but apologise. It's all rather embarrassing. I believe members were called to be apologised to. Don't know what happened, why that was a mess up. But thank you for joining, and please stay involved. And just all I can say is I'm sorry that was a mistake on my office's part. Fran's desperate to speak. She's in. Go on, do you want to say something?
Thank you, councillors. And I just wanted to point out that it wasn't anything to do with the Police and Crime Commissioner. It was a miscommunication somehow in the office that I haven't quite got to the bottom of. So my sincere apologies if that affected anybody in this room, and we'll make sure that absolutely doesn't happen again. And you will be sent anything that you've missed this week. We'll make sure that you've got all that information. But if there are ever any queries, please contact the office direct and always double check. Because sometimes we don't know about these things until they've happened. So my sincere apologies, it's on the office and not on the Commissioner.
Thank you, Fran. And I wasn't going to bring it up, but I was certainly one of them that was extremely disappointed. My portfolio, my lead officers were actually, and I do believe that, and I'm not just saying it, but I do believe they give a very good presentation about what's happening here in Plymouth. But I did email back and asked for the query, is this really true? Am I now no longer? After only probably about five months ago, the Commissioner presented me a certificate of good work as an advocate. So I must have done something wrong in the last 5 months. But no, on a serious note, do you know what I mean? I thought that this doesn't make sense. So I did make that correspondence and then still got correspondence back to say no. So, yeah, human error. There has been a mistake. Everybody does make mistakes, and I accept that. But unfortunately, majority of us as councillors, our diary just jams right up. And if we free a whole day to take part in this, Commissioner, you can never get a whole day back. So I think lessons have been learned. But thank you for whoever has tried phoning to apologise. I know I was in the meeting, so I missed it, but I have received an email. So moving on from that, so that was item 7. The report was just to note, members. Are members happy just to note? Yeah? Okay. So we're going to move on to item 8, which is the draft annual report. Commissioner, would you like to talk through your key points in this report, please?
Chair, it's probably, so this is a statutory document that we have to produce from my office, and I often get helpful feedback from panel, which is why we only bring a draft here so that we can take away. I have had some comments, I believe, from Councillor Loudon, thank you, and they will be taken on board. And if anybody else wants to do anything outside of this meeting that you'd like us to amend, that would be more than helpful. So I suppose you know what I've done in the last year, because many of you will have still been here and been part of it. So I won't go into detail about the report. I'll just be open to questions. And again, if you want to influence what that looks like, it's not been designed yet. This is the raw product, so it will look slightly different when it's finished.
Thank you, Commissioner. Do we have... Oh, show of hands here. Councillor Penberthy's first one, please.
Great, thanks. Just a few points as I was reading this, Commissioner. Since you started the process of developing this plan, there has been a change in government, and that means that obviously the new government priorities are there, some of which are well reflected in this plan, some of which, especially those around community policing, less visible. I just wonder whether you should be reflecting in your annual report on the bit of the government priority that is not very visible in your plan, in order to make that available to people in Devon, Cornwall, the Isles and Scilly as well, because I think some of the other areas are clearly there, but that is not so visible, and there will be requirements in terms of protecting community policing, enhanced community reporting through policing, and controlled by communities in what those policing teams do. So that's quite a big change and will have an impact on some of your plans. So I just thought it might be worth a reflection, given that since your last plan report that's happened. In terms of the graphics, on all of the graphics you've given us information to be in an infographic other than the one that's your total summary, and it's a bit difficult for us to comment on whether this is a prioritisation list or not. Just a couple of other bits. You've talked a lot on prisoners building homes, but you've talked about it as a national scheme. Whilst it is a national scheme, at the moment it looks like that's a national scheme being run by Devon, Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly. And if it is, does that have a financial implication to Devon, Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly in terms of supporting a national scheme? But also it's not clear in here what that's doing in Devon, Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly as opposed to what it's doing nationally. And I think that would be good. I must admit, you also mentioned an open letter following the riots of last summer. I must admit, I've not seen it. If you're sending an open letter, is it worth sending an open letter to all councillors? Because councillors have links to community groups, and something like that was really important, I think, for that open letter to have been able to be circulated. Thank you.
Chair, that's really helpful. A couple of things there, Councillor Penberthy. The open letter was front page of all the newspapers, so we did it in order to generate a massive media push. But you're absolutely right. If I ever write an open letter, I will share that to all councillors. I think that's an excellent idea. Prisoners building homes, we're in a very tricky situation, and it's one of the governance challenges we've got. As a Police and Crime Commissioner, I don't have a general power of competence like a local authority. I can't set up arm's length companies and things like that. So we've got sort of loose governance around the prisoners building homes, and we've actually had to second the member of staff that was leading it into local partnerships. No, we haven't done that.
No, sorry, I should. It's not a formal secondment. It's not a formal secondment. She's working very closely with local partnerships, but she remains a Devon and Cornwall employee. But hence, we're just navigating rather a complex set of governance arrangements just at the moment. Sorry, Commissioner.
Yeah. But I get your point, and we will put in here about what we've done in Devon, Cornwall, and the Isles of Scilly in relation to delivering on the prisoners building homes project. And absolute put in about the general election, change of government and priorities. It's particularly the neighbourhood policing guarantee that we need to put in there, so I will amend that.
Thank you. Gordon.
Thank you. Three points. They link back to the previous meeting. Could you give us an update on what you can share with us with regard to the firing ranges and particularly the certification levels that the force is maintaining. Secondly, antisocial behaviour gets a lot of publicity. Again, we talked last time about giving some more detail on what antisocial behaviour is. Now, going back to your favourite subject of night buses, or my favourite subject, night buses, obviously there was a definition of a need. The need has been fulfilled and it's been successful. So if we can analyse those figures, or if someone can analyse those figures in more detail, that would be helpful. So my question is, does the next level of breakdown exist, and is that being used? And from that, what can we share with us that will give us reassurance that antisocial behaviour isn't just another word for pickpocketing and burglary, which it could be, because antisocial behaviour could be any crime, and it could be double counting or triple counting or root cause analysis and all that sort of thing. And the third one, and I noticed it's on the future work programme, but a brief mention on where we're going with custody suites. I think we said last time it would be mentioned at each, well, I thought we'd said it would be mentioned on each report, just an update on where we're going, even if it's just a plan for the future, but having that included. I notice it's on the work programme, so if that's the case, that's fine, but it needs to be in the meeting, in the minutes rather. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So just in terms of this annual report, it only relates up to the end of March this year. So the night buses have largely been funded in this financial year, so it'll be in my next year's annual report. I've only funded one, I believe, which is the North Devon one in the last financial year. I may have done Newquay as well, but I think it's just the North Devon one, which was our pilot, the Bideford, Barnstable, Ilfracombe, which has been largely successful. It's led us to me wanting a strategy for it across the whole patch, but there'll be much more about that in next year's annual report. Just in terms of the custody suites, we are in the process of developing a plan. We haven't got a plan yet. My office is doing some scrutiny around the safety of detainees and their rights and welfare being met. That's the first part, and my office is looking at what are our independent custody visitors saying about the suites that they visit. How often is an appropriate adult available? We've got boundary issues from Cornwall appropriate adults going into Plymouth because they won't do that, but a Cornwall person who's arrested and gets taken to Plymouth then can't access an appropriate adult. So we've got some things we need to really understand, and that's my office is actually doing that scrutiny as we speak. And then there's a longer term plan about the actual cost and the facilities and what they actually look like. The reality is there's absolutely no savings in a custody suite. They are expensive to run, expensive both physically and with resources of the staff. It can take up to 20 sergeants to staff one custody suite to be available 24/7. So you can imagine how many sergeants we've got sitting behind a desk running custody suites. But closing them doesn't make any difference because you'd only move them into a bigger custody suite because you'd need more wings in a bigger custody suite. I've just given you a bit of a flavour of some of the challenge that we've got around it, but we can bring back when we've got perhaps that scrutiny that we've done, we might be able to share some of that with panel. That might be a possibility. Antisocial behaviour, the challenge with it is there's police measured antisocial behaviour, so things like criminal damage, which is a crime, and then there's council measured antisocial behaviour, which might be noise and other complaints. So it's quite hard to do a definition. Largely there isn't one phone number to ring for antisocial behaviour. So they often come to the police, but it might be a council issue, or they might come to the council and it might be a police issue. We still have that challenge in tackling antisocial behaviour, which is why we've worked so hard with local authorities to bring those operational frontline officers, both with that are police staff and police officers and with council staff who have the powers delegated from the chief constable. Then we can deal with both elements. And that's been quite powerful, but it's not, you can still see we've got antisocial behaviour challenges on our streets. It's clearly not working well enough. And then finally, just on firing ranges, it's one of my biggest headaches. We don't get a capital budget from the government for policing. We have no capital funding whatsoever. And so our firing ranges, it is sort of on its last few years. And we are exploring both regionally and nationally about what we're going to do with firing ranges. Fundamentally, if the government gets its way and wants to have this centre for policing that they're really keen about, we'd be saying, oh, well, okay, are you taking on all firing ranges then? And are you going to upgrade them? And are you going to do things with them? So there's a lot still to be explored. But at the moment, our firing range is certified and is working. And we don't want officers to travel too far to have to go and train, because they take a lot of time out to train. And I don't want to take it out of Devon. We can't really take it out of Devon and Cornwall, because it'd be even more time out in travelling and staying overnight and doing things like that. So we are exploring improving our firing range, but at the moment we haven't got a budget that we've identified for that.
Okay, happy? Yeah.
Chair, can I just go back on that?
Is it a point of order of it, Councillor Hackett?
It's to do with that very subject. We've got the army firing ranges on Dartmoor.
Councillor Hackett, why don't you just wait?
Oh, sorry, I thought you gave me the nod.
No,
I beg your pardon.
Sorry, if you could just wait. I do have people waiting very patiently. Okay. Laura.
Thank you, Chair. I've got 2 questions, if that's okay. But before I do that, am I allowed to make a point of clarification on that? I don't know if that's the right term, thank you, but it's just about the request and the negotiations, conversations about opening a public-facing office in the Civic Centre in Exeter. I think we would have tried to talk about still having that, but without having the capacity for people to bring weapons in, but to keep that as being in Middlemore. And my understanding is those conversations didn't progress very far, but I think I just want to state for Exeter's benefit that we didn't say no completely, it was just that aspect. Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to do that. My 2 questions on the report. The first one about the Plymouth and Torbay Safe Bus. Brilliant initiatives, and as you know, Commissioner, I worked as a volunteer first aider and welfare assistant in the Exeter safe space when that was open. So I've done the night shifts, I've mopped up all sorts of bodily fluids, looked after people, seen exactly what it does. So this is really, really good. My question is, because the Exeter Safe Space charity that was set up has now been closed by the trustees. So I wonder if you or your office could help us in Exeter, please, to try and link up with the right people to start talking to revisit and revision how this can run, because we do need it again in Exeter or something similar. So I wondered if I could call on you for some help with that, please. My second question on the report is about section 2, page 48 of the pack, page 19 of the report, about scrutiny. I welcome this. When I first heard you were setting up a scrutiny body, I was affronted, because I thought, well, we are your scrutiny body, but of course we're not the scrutiny body for the police force. We are the scrutiny body for you and your office. So I really welcome seeing this extra scrutiny of the police force operationally. But I wondered, are you going to include any feedback from that into reports to us? Accountability board, that's the word I was looking for. And also from the local criminal justice board, which you mentioned in your report, because I think it would be useful for us as panel members to see any comments and recommendations that have come from those boards, just to come to us by way of including in your report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As you can imagine, my office does create quite a lot of output, and a lot of this is available on the website. So just to let you know, from the Commissioner's Accountability Board, we publish an assurance statement as to whether I'm assured with the operational activity that's happening in the performance at the moment, and assured or not of the plan for improvement if they've got one, and whether I think that's enough. So those statements are published online every time I've had a Commissioner's Accountability Board. I think I've run 2 or 3 so far. I've got another 2 coming up in the next few weeks. So they're available publicly. The other element around the safe bus, unfortunately, Torbay's is going to close because the health side have pulled out. So Plymouth, I think, is the only one left standing at this point, again. So I'm more than happy to see what we can do, Councillor Wright, to try and solve the Exeter problem. Let's have a conversation. We may well be having to have the same one with Torbay as well at this point. And then finally, just to say about the front desk in Exeter, the problem we've got is that we can't guarantee, and this was the issue, we can't guarantee that residents wouldn't bring in weapons. We couldn't, if they brought them in, we couldn't turn them away, and we couldn't stop them bringing them in. So that because we couldn't guarantee that, that's why, unfortunately, we haven't been able to get over the line with that.
I was just going to pick up myself regarding, I know Laura has already said about the Plymouth and Torbay Safe Bus. Firstly, from a Plymouth point of view, thank you for supporting some funding with that. It goes a long way, and you know we've struggled. But just in the report, it probably needs to be altered. It's not every Saturday. We could be running on a different day, depending if it's Freshers Week or if it's Halloween or something. So just a little bit of an error there, but more to the point, thank you, and I'm sure you'll see me coming again for more funding in the future. Councillor Hackett, you had a point.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair, and sorry I misconstrued your nod earlier. Firing ranges, we've got firing ranges on Dartmoor. Could they not be utilised by the police as a cost-saving exercise?
Thank you, Chair. First thing is we do work closely with the military, or the police force works closely with the military, and my estates team do too. So there is some opportunity, but largely most of the sites, particularly the ones that they use to train their military officers on, are busily used lots of times of the year, and we need lots of times of the year to be using it for police officers. So there is an issue about capacity and availability at the time sometimes when we might need to use it.
Right. I actually went up when the Army were firing early this year, and I was told that they only use the firing ranges about 2 weeks a year, and they remain dormant for a lot of the time. So capacity should be there.
So there's two types of firing range. There's indoor firing ranges, which we have at HQ Middlemore, and then there's open space firing ranges, and then there's lots of different things like train wrecks and stuff that they do things in as well. The indoor firing ranges, there is no capacity anywhere with the military in relation to that, but the outdoor firing ranges, we are in negotiation with them.
Okay, and I'm delighted to hear that I'll be put back on the Councillor Advocate list. I'm sorry I missed it. And did I take it your nod was that you will come to Bideford as you nodded to come to launch?
Councillor Hackett.
I just wanted to clarify so I can go back to my council.
I'm not a new chair.
I know.
So don't try not to push it, okay?
Okay, but could I
I'm going to. Why don't you send the Commissioner an email? Okay?
We did before, but she gave a nod to Lawson. I don't think we should be treated differently.
We're not going to get in a debate, are we? We're really not.
No.
Not on my first day.
I respect you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner, on page, it's the staffing section, is it 57? It's got the boxes that show staff levels. I'm just thinking in terms of supporting the narrative, you might want to consider putting something in there around the narrative, because, you know, to somebody who looks at it for the first time, they're going to see figures at 24 and then figures at 25, and they're going to see a drop on numbers. And it just occurs to me whether you want that, whether you want some sort of narrative around that, because, you know, clearly there is a reason for that. But if I was a member of the public, I'd probably want an explanation at that point, notwithstanding the fact that they're flexible. But
Chairman, I'll pick that up. We'll put some narrative around that to make it clear, and it'd probably be worth saying why the numbers, why they went up in particular number level, because it's council tax and it's government grant, and so we've had these things that have enabled it. So it'd be worth putting some of that narrative in there.
Chair, I don't dispute there are reasons. It's more the point of making it clear. Yeah.
Councillor Loudon.
Thank you, Chair. Problem with sitting next to Councillor Thomas, he obviously reads my notes. The point Dan's just made around staffing, I was going to ask, but I was also just going to refer back, and in some ways it's a point of information or seeking information. So back in April and May, we had an exchange. You and I had an exchange over Exmouth potential site in Exmouth. I'm not going to go into detail here. All I will say is that my officers say to me, despite my, I thought positive, well, you thought a positive response, because that's what you told me. Our officers, gosh, that sounds terrible. Our officers have not had any contact whatsoever since then, and that was as of Tuesday of this week.
Chairman, that's extremely helpful to let me know that. We have found another building I'm quite interested in, but I'd be more than happy to just come back to you, your council, in order to have those conversations.
Thank you. If you wouldn't mind just copying me in, that would be helpful, so at least I can then know I can put this to bed, possibly.
Councillor Billings.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner, thank you for the draft report. I wonder whether there's the opportunity to provide a short form or a simplified version, or more in a summary graphic. For example, in Torbay, there's been a great sort of push to try to make reports more easy read. This is very much it's pitched at a level where it's appropriate for people to scrutinise you in the office in detail, but I wonder whether there's an easier way of making it accessible for everyone in our communities to look at. And I would encourage maybe a short form or some graphics or something to do that, maybe a simplified summary at the beginning. And then, Chair, my second point, if I may, and for this I should declare a conflict of interest, and if we can add that through the clerk too. I'm the Vice Chair of Vision Zero. And I wanted to turn to page 12, because it's taken me, and this partly relates to what I was saying earlier, it's taken until page 12 to listen to the outstanding work that the police have done on tackling road safety and be told about the world first of the AccuSensor systems. And I'm sorry for my colleagues, I appreciate the page numbers are different on different versions, whether you're looking at the web or the printed version. And also I think there are other versions of that, for example, the noise camera that's at Exmouth Seafront. And from that, from our the Vision Zero meetings, that's translated for those that are able to attend to actual concrete knowledge. We've seen, for example, through that camera that's looking at whether people are wearing seatbelts, heartbreaking stories where the parent might be buckled up in the front seat, but 3 children in the car might not be. And I wonder whether providing that granular detail, as well as referring to some of these other successes, and really unpacking what this means in practical terms, might showcase the work that's gone on, which I've had the benefit of understanding in other formats, but I'm not seeing in this. So thank you for what you're doing, thank you for what colleagues are doing, but I think that'd help readers, Chair. Thank you.
Again, really helpful comments. If you read through this report, it does almost look like a brain dump, really, doesn't it, of everything that we've been doing, but it hasn't brought to life some of the excitement that's around it. So I completely get your point around, I'm not planning to actually do a printed version as such of this one this year. I am going to do a lot more sort of interactive online, so hopefully we'll be able to pick up your issue and things that can be shared and told as stories, really. In terms of the Vision Zero work, though, one of the things that members may not be aware, through that AI camera, it's really massive arm that we've put on a number of different roads. We're sort of the first in the country to sort of trial it properly. We've trialled it over a 3-year period, and we have noticed a reduction in people wearing, an improvement in people wearing seatbelts over a 3-year period. We think we've got the evidence base to show that it's made a difference. You won't believe that camera, which can catch you using a mobile phone or not wearing your seatbelt, not wearing a seatbelt was double the number of people using a mobile phone. Now, where are we at as a society where we've got people not wearing seatbelts behind the wheel? So we've got, we think, a bit of a challenge around that, and we are hoping, and Councillor Billings, you won't be aware yet, but I'm hoping to go to Westminster with that flipping great big AI camera and make it really visible and get all the politicians out to come and see it. Because not wearing a seatbelt, which is what it's been catching, we need to really raise the profile of that nationally. So hopefully, Councillor Billings, you'll be able to come with me to join me on that Westminster trip.
Barry.
Hi. I want to talk to you about the complaints process that you've mentioned under scrutiny section. So this is not to do with misconduct, it's to do with a complaint against a decision, which would then be an officer decides not to investigate something, for example. If you know the process, so then the process would be to go again to the police, and if you're lucky, it'll pass through their professional standards department, and then it would get, there's an impression that's a department in itself that will investigate or look at the issue, but these complaints actually get delegated instead, and then maybe delegated again, so that PSD loses sight of the complaint. And you could end up with it being delegated so far that it arrives on my desk and I'm investigating Councillor Thomas. So it doesn't really seem a very credible system. But they're happy with that. Devon and Cornwall Police are happy with that. It then comes to the complaint review process. This is what happens. Well, I can understand you're not happy. So then it comes to your complaint review process. And I've seen, earlier in the year, there was a specified information order, which you declare that you're not happy. You say you're deeply disappointed, I think it was. You're disappointed with the Devon and Cornwall. At the same time, after that process, it then comes to your area. If people know the process, you can see it being whittled down all the time, the number of people that go through the process, the full process. You come to the complaint review section, and there you are not looking at the issue itself. You seem to be investigating, I think you described it as proportionality, appropriateness, or something like this, and process. But really, from what I can see, it's basically you're just investigating process. That's where the majority of your outcomes, which advice to the Devon and Cornwall Police, come from the process. So there's a lot being missed there. And I understand you actually have you've employed another company called Sanka Solutions to take some of the workload off you. And what can I say? That you're only investigating process, and any police officer who's been around for a while knows which boxes to tick. So really, it's not a really credible. It's not a credible complaint review process.
So, Chair, if I may, though the process is laid out by government, at the moment, that is my role, is to be the appeals body for the complaints against the police, and all we can investigate is the process. I can't even use the term investigate, if I'm honest. We're not allowed to investigate anything, but we review whether or not they followed the correct process, and we are upholding a high number of complaints that have not followed the process. And the process helps when they actually speak to the complainant and they understand what the complainant is complaining about. And often that's where it starts to go wrong. If they haven't established that at the beginning, it all flows through as not being a very helpful situation. The reality is, because I've been so unhappy, I've released £500,000 resources into the complaints department. They've recruited a new head of complaints, well, we didn't even have one before, a head of complaints and a team that are now in the professional standards department. They're part of the professional standards department, but they only deal with the complaints from the public, not misconduct. So we've got a new team in there. There's also been backlogs, and I will apologise now, Chair, to any resident that has put a complaint into Devon and Cornwall Police and has not heard back and in any sort of timely manner. The backlog has been potentially up to a year, and this is why I was so dissatisfied with what was happening, and I've put the investment in for the Chief Constable to help try and solve. And we've got an excellent head of complaints who has started with us, Jack Bland. He's come from the NHS, so he's fresh eyes, and he's really got that backlog right down now. We've nearly got rid of it. But the fundamental issue is the rules, that is all I'm able to do as a Police and Crime Commissioner, is review the process.
So
in an
I say
appeal
again,
process.
it's not a credible complaint review if it's only looking at the process. And I say police officers know what they're doing when they tick the boxes.
I think you'll find with most public sector bodies, when it gets to appeal stage, whether it's the local government ombudsman, whether it's any of them, they're only reviewing whether you followed the right process. It's the same for the community trigger, now called ASB reviews, that I do for local authorities. I'm the appeals body for the ASB case review, and all I can do is review process. But don't get me wrong, I understand what that individual is complaining about, and I make sure that they're getting some sort of result from it. I might be able to review the process, but if I'm still dissatisfied that they've not got the help they've got, we do put things in place.
But they're not listening to you. I mean, you say that in your response. The police are not listening to your advice, your recommendations. Are they?
It's largely because they haven't had a team focused purely on complaints, which they now have, that was fully established in, what month would you say? Yeah, January, February this year. In fact, they had to do a presentation to His Majesty's Inspectorate as part of the integrity inspection, which we're still awaiting a report on that, and they'd only just started. So they're fresh this year, but we have got a team in place. The investment's been put there. I'm expecting to see improvements in it, and it means that they've got the time then to actually manage the complaints properly.
Well, and can I just say,
we're actually in a whole meeting here.
Okay.
I'm not just sat here and we've been going through the chair. But I think what we need to do is we need the Commissioner's already explained, okay? I think we could look at this on the work programme if you want to go down into more detail on this, and I'm quite happy for this to be an item in our reports. But I really just don't want a conversation just between the two of you.
Can I just make one more point?
Very quickly, because I do have a list.
Laura mentioned it, that this accountability board, there's not a great deal of transparency from that board. So you did a deep dive about the complaints process, and all we know is you're assured. I'm not assured as part of the scrutiny panel. So I don't know, there's a void there somewhere.
Okay, and fair point. And let's have a look at our work programme and see where we could probably scrutinise a little bit more on that, okay? Mandy, you're our last speaker for this item, please.
Thank you very much. Just going back a little bit, Alison, the seatbelts issue. When you go to Westminster with this, are you going to be able to give an age profile of people not wearing their seatbelts? You know, is it the newly qualified drivers, or is it people who are much older? So that was one. The report summary, I like the idea of that, but I also like the idea of there being a young person's version of your report. I recently, before our IT manager left, for a joke, did a report. It was up, we asked AI to do a housing report. I then asked it to do a summary, and it had all the photos and everything. I then asked it to do a child's version, and the difference was incredible. It put in completely different animations, and the font was completely different, a lot more funky, and everything else. And I just wondered if it is worth maybe doing a younger person's one aimed at your police cadets, that we could send into schools as well as a summary of your work for PSHE lessons and things. So that was just a little thought. For Jake, it's the South Devon and Dartmoor Community Safety Partnership.
Okay. Commissioner? Thank you, Chair. I think that's an excellent idea to try and do that. And it would give me something, because I actually go out and do talks in some of our colleges as well. I'm sure they wouldn't want the sort of childlike one, but I could do with some more products that will actually assist that, and especially around the guide to what a Police and Crime Commissioner can do for you, and pulling out some of the elements from the annual report. I think that's an excellent idea. Thank you. I'll take that
AI
away.
can do it in a minute.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, panel members. The report is, again, just to note, so is everybody happy that we just note the report? Yep, okay. So moving on to item 9. So this is the cost and functions of the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner. I'm going to hand over again to yourself, Commissioner.
Thank you, Chair. I don't think I've got much to say. It says it pretty much all in the report. I think the one thing I will say in terms of our office is the elements that maybe members wouldn't be so aware of some of the volunteering that we support through our office. But I'll leave it open to questions if you like, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Do we have questions? Councillor Loudon was the first.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner, in the pack, page 70, section 2.12. You with me? Yeah, right. So the second paragraph at the end of it there, and this is about your leaflets that go out once a year, and you're telling us that it costs you an extra 70k or thereabouts because 4 of us don't send out your leaflets. I just wanted to put on the record the reason why my council I represent, hasn't done that for the last 2 years. And we have advised your office, and that is, and I sought officer advice on this. So there were 4 reasons why we chose not to do it. And we advised you in 24-25. Didn't make any difference. You then did exactly the same in 25-26. And there were 4 reasons. One is that it was sent directly to our printers, not by us, but by yourselves, without coming through our council for approval. Secondly, our council is responsible for any enclosures that we send out. So therefore you can understand the linkage between what I said a second ago. As I say, we've advised you in 24-25, made no difference in 25-26, and we are slightly concerned, if you like, about the language being singular, referring to my and I, and the interpretation was that that was more political than straightforward, informative, that perhaps we would send out to our residents. So if you wish for 26-27 to approach us in a slightly different way, then things may change, but that's the reason why one of the councils doesn't send it out, unfortunately.
Thank you, Chair. If I get another member of the public say to me, what does the Police and Crime Commissioner do? And I put their council tax up every year, I think it's absolutely, and it is, my statutory duty to inform residents, which is why I do this every year, to ensure that people know what I'm spending their money on, that I've raised through council tax in particular. But I understand your point that you raise, and I'll be more than happy for my office to liaise with you, but unfortunately the council does not approve what I send out from my office. I approve, and my monitoring officer approves what gets sent out from my office.
Thank you. Councillor Hodgetts, have I said that? Hodgetts?
Hodgetts. I've always wanted to change it. I'm new to this, so forgive my lack of experience. And I don't know whether quite my question actually comes into the work programme or into this section, but I'm a bit concerned about how much funding goes into ensuring that the force can meet its obligations with equalities legislation and the public sector equality duty and all those sorts of things, and quite where that might sit within what you might allocate for that kind of thing, or whether that is something that the Chief Constable might just handle solely, because I know there are issues around that at the moment.
Thank you, Chair. So the Chief Constable's responsible for the statutory duties that they have to deliver. I'm not aware of any recent investment in that department or anything. We have a diverse communities team, we have an HR function, and at the moment we're actually going through priority based budgeting, which is working with PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, who are coming in and looking at all of our alliance functions with Dorset to see where we are efficient, inefficient, or opportunities for investment that might be needed. And all of that is all of our back office. It's all HR, it's all ICT, it's legal, it's all of the sort of back office finance, all the back office functions. And we're just going through that process now, line by line, on every bit of budget in there. So I suspect there will be a bit of a step change when we come out the other end of that process, which will be feeding into our budget process. And I'll report back on some of the things that we've decided through it. We've still got some meetings exploring and scrutinising those budget lines, but we will have some clarity by the time we come to budget and panel in February. So again, there may be a good opportunity to ask that question when we do the budget in February.
Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner, I reiterate Councillor Loudon's point. I know I can speak for West Devon on this as well, and that we have the same issue regarding the leaflet. And I fully appreciate that you have to send something out explaining what you do. I completely understand that. But we need to see it, not to have any editorial input onto it, but just we have a statutory duty to be satisfied that what is being sent out in our name on our behalf is appropriate. So I just think there is a way of getting around this just by accepting that it needs to go to the district councils in question, not to edit, but just on a yes or no basis. But look, Commissioner, let's be totally honest, and this does speak a little bit to the conversation you had with Councillor Hackett. It's really difficult for you not to be political. It's really difficult for you to divorce you from your role. So when you said to Councillor Hackett you went to North Cornwall but you didn't go as the Commissioner, that's really hard for you to do, actually. In fact, I would suggest in this space it's almost impossible for you to do. So therefore my challenge to you is to think about the optics, because it will look to Councillor Hackett and to the people of North Devon that you've gone there as the Commissioner. You might say you haven't, and you might be genuine in that belief, but you were a politician before you were the Commissioner. You know as well as I do it is about the optics of the situation. The optics for us at districts were that in the year that you were standing for re-election, you were sending out literature, which you will say justified the council tax rise. But a less objective person might have said it looked like an election address, Commissioner. That's the challenge we have. And I appreciate that you've got a difficult path to walk there. So all I would ask you is to perhaps just think about the optics, if you would, please.
Chair, I completely understand the point, but let's just be really clear. I am political. I'm a Conservative Police and Crime Commissioner for Devon, Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly, whether people like it or not, and I am political. It is a political role. I raise taxes, I spend taxpayers' money, and I think we just have to be really clear that that is a fact. But I would never, and I think the optic you're trying to get explored here, I would never use the resources of my office for political reasons. I have a monitoring officer in my team who oversees everything, and because it's business as usual that we send that council tax leaflet out every year, it isn't a political leaflet. One of the things I will say though is that I would welcome the opportunity to negotiate with you about being inserted into the West Devon system as well.
I'll just come back very quickly. Look, I entirely accept that you are the Conservative Police and Crime Commissioner. And, in the same way that you accept that the politics in this room have changed quite dramatically over the last few years. But notwithstanding that point, I just think that it is worth pointing out that, if you're going to go and support members of your party in an election, as Alison Hernandez, then just be honest about that fact. If you don't want to go and meet Councillor Hackett because you have a robust relationship with Councillor Hackett, then let's just be honest about it. Well, let's be honest about it. We're sitting in a room of adults. I think this skirting around doesn't do anyone any favours.
Just to add on it, I nodded to Councillor Hackett that I would come and visit him, just so that you are aware. I'm not trying to avoid Councillor Hackett.
I'm sure he will be thrilled, Commissioner.
That was to meet councillors, not a personal invitation. But I did win the Commissioner's award for the work I've done as a police counsellor advocate some years ago. So, yes, we need a strong working relationship. We all do.
Okay, moving on. Are you happy with that, Councillor Thompson? Thank you. Councillor Penberthy, you are our final question.
Thank you, Chair. And just following all of those discussions, there's actually just a couple of bits of comment I'd like to pick up before I actually get to my question. But the first thing is, thank you for sending this report. I think, last time when we were talking at the budget meeting, it was really difficult to unpick your office costs and understand them. I think it is appropriate that we are able to scrutinise that, because that is explicitly used. So thank you for bringing that. I think it makes everything a lot clearer. So thank you. Just in terms of your diverse communities teams, they do amazing work. We've had a couple of instances recently in Plymouth where risk has been determined by for certain events. And on one of them, I actually told the diverse communities team it was happening, and it is one that the diverse communities team would have a very real perception of what the risks to communities might be, not necessarily the risk of crime or antisocial behaviour or anything else. So I think where those diverse communities teams are able to properly influence the work of operational policing might still need some work, as opposed to being seen as the nice people from the police who are out at a whole load of community events. I think they probably have a more pivotal role than might be realised in some areas. I'd also just like to pick up on optics. We go into pre-election periods with massive amounts of rules about where we can and can't be seen, where we can and can't be photographed, and everything. If, as a member of the public in a pre-election period, I went into a police station with a candidate because it had an implication on a role, we probably wouldn't get past the desk and we'd be told to go away. I think the optics for you are, if a member of the public or another candidate wasn't able to do it, visiting a police station which is very operational is something that you probably just need to be more conscious of, just as a word of advice. I don't go out and do things with housing providers in that pre-election period because it could be seen that they are favouring a party. So I think it's a really difficult one for us all to negotiate, but it might be one worth you thinking about when if you're out politically campaigning. Doing something on a street is one thing, doing things with any police officers or on police estate, whilst it's not directly your office, could be perceived as the manipulation of your office. And I think that's probably where we're trying to dig down to. So I was just trying to reflect back on those conversations as a bit of advice. And I know in my ward, you've been out with candidates before, but you've been on the streets, so what? If you did it at Charles Cross Police Station, I'd probably be getting a bit antsy. So, just that difference. What I wanted to actually ask about was, you've acknowledged here that you do need to get back to your 0.65% target, which didn't come across at all in the budget. It was just like, it's gone up, you just have to put up with it. I think that's a good acknowledgement. You've said that you're taking actions. It might not be, 0.03% of a budget might not be very much. Actually, in a budget that's trying to do as much of as yours is, it is going to have some impact. I think it might be helpful when you come to the budget setting for next year to actually talk about how you are going to achieve that saving, given that costs are rising, so that you're quite explicit about coming back to 0.65%. Whether that's the right or the wrong figure is slightly immaterial, but I think how we see that coming back, because that's money that is then released to frontline policing. So I would welcome that at the budget point. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of things. You might be, I know I've been in discussion with the Chief Constable about Diverse Communities team, and he would like to see all neighbourhood teams like the Diverse Communities team. So they need to take more responsibility at a local policing level to know who everyone is and visit the right place and understand it. He'd love to see more of that. I've had that conversation with the Chief Constable. Just quickly on this political point that keeps coming up, I think the public probably who aren't involved in politics don't understand how it works, but it's, for example, when a minister comes from the government on a government visit, they'll do a side visit on a political visit while they're there. Let's just be really frank. This is what happens when you're in politics. You have to work with your party if you're a member of a party, and you work with your community who you work on behalf of. And it is a fine line to balance. I get the point. It's about perception, and I will take that point on board. And I'm pleased that we are looking at ways that we can get back down to the 0.65%. The reason I have it as a percentage is that I do grow. My office grows when the force grows, and if the force shrinks, it will shrink with it. So it's about keeping a bit of stability and ability to be able to flex when required. But unfortunately, these costs that came in, because chief constables wanted more change to the misconduct process, it's just brought in so much extra cost. But we will work that through, and hopefully you'll be happy when I bring the budget that it won't be going up above that percentage.
Okay, thank you. Again, this report is to note. Is panel happy to note the report? Thank you. Okay, we're running on with time now, so we're going on to item 10, and that's our performance report. So I'm going to hand over to the Commissioner again, and if we can keep it quite brief, because time is running on. Thank you.
I think, Chair, what I will say is the report looks alarming. There's a lot of red in the report, but I just want to reassure members that some of the reasons for that is because that's why I've identified them as priorities in my plan, that there needs to be more focus on it. So the latest Office of National Statistics literally came out, I believe, published yesterday. It was definitely this week. So this is quite old data as well that you've got before you. So as we move forward, we'll be a little bit more up to date. So I just wanted to flag, do not be concerned by the level of red on the areas around the police and crime plan. It's why they are priorities in the plan for us to try and fix. It's the first performance report that you've seen in that detail. And also, please don't be too alarmed about the red on the police performance scorecard. If you look at some of the data, they're nearly there. They're doing really well. And I'll be really pleased that, we've got 90% of 101 calls are answered within 10 minutes, and they're at 88.88%. And I think that's quite a fantastic achievement with the efforts that ACC LEPA in the force has led over the last couple of years. And you've seen the massive improvements. And I'm sure when your residents speak to you, if they're ringing 101, they are getting through. It isn't a 45-minute wait as been in the past or longer. And I also want to say that they've worked really hard to get their 999 calls answered quickly and understood the performance of what was affecting that get through. So I'll leave it open to questions on that point, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Councillor Pemberthy.
Thank you, Chair. Once again, I'll just bundle everything together so I get one bite of the cherry and then get out. The government is currently out to consultation, but it is the new local government outcomes framework comes into place from April the 1st next year. That is based around all the missions. Community safety is in there. We'll then have local government reporting on stuff and you reporting on stuff. What actions are you taking to make sure that there are consistencies of messages? Because if you're using stats that are different than the ones in the government framework, we're going to get two different sets of reporting. What that will do is lower confidence in the police, not raise it, because it'll look like there's something going wrong. So it's just a challenge out. I think you talk a lot about, it's great because we're low compared to all police forces, but when you look at us against our family group, the figures here are slightly more worrying. It might be useful in future reports to do a bit of learning from family group members that are doing really well in those areas. It's what we'd all do in terms of our family groups. It might be interesting to see what you're doing in those areas. I do think that the next three are linked. Recording crime accurately, you rightly highlight as wrong, but that we then get told that actually the direction of travel measure in terms of police treating everyone fairly and satisfaction in terms of priority victims are both decreasing. If people don't feel confident that things are being reported properly, actually those are two cohorts of people who are then more likely to think that there is potential prejudice or other things happening and crimes not being treated properly. So I think that getting crimes reported properly is really, really important. And I know it might be operational, but I think we do need to hear more about the work being done to ensure that crimes are being reported properly Otherwise, we're not able to hold you to account on your strategic direction, because if 10% of crime is not being reported correctly, that could substantially skew figures one way or another. So it would be interesting to, I think, for us to have more of a deep dive into that. Those were my thoughts on the paper, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I wonder, Chair, if it's possible through you for a local authority to come and do a presentation to my office about the local outcomes framework. I think it would be quite helpful to understand what's being reported through there and what we actually might. I don't know if we need a lead counsel to do that, or it'd be really good to have that conversation.
I think at the moment that's something that is, the government are consulting on the final bits of measures, so they've just said they're going to do it. They've scrapped off-log, they're bringing this in, and it starts from next April, and that will then be something that we are all having to report. They're saying it's standard measures, but I think it's 114 indicators around the key government missions, but that actually local councils will be the ones being reported on that as system leads. So I just think that it's new for all of us, but while we're doing that, it's about getting it right.
Yeah.
So I think we're all in the learning space, but none of us have got very much time.
We'll park that till we got a bit further down the line on that one then. Just in terms of the recording crime, it is an onerous process, interestingly, to record a crime, to actually unpick what crime has occurred. Sometimes it's obvious, isn't it? It's black and white. You've either done a traffic offence or you haven't, but sometimes you have to really unpick what is the legal framework and the law that fits which crime it is. And I think I've told you before, the book of actually how you record crime is this thick. And it's quite a process. The police, the force at the moment have got much better at doing it. But what I will say is it probably would be helpful to have a presentation on what crime data integrity looks like and the types of processes that they go through for recording crime, to give you some assurance that these things exist. So that might be something you might want to consider on a future work plan. And I'm absolutely with you about the recording crime. We've got two things, haven't we? We know in our communities, and there's just been quite a lot of political conversation about this in the news yesterday, we know in our communities we can witness drug dealing or antisocial behaviour or shop theft before our very eyes. But if you look at the recorded crime stats, it will say, well, it's not too bad. So there is a misinterpretation between what is actually recorded crime or reported, it's reported and recorded crime, and what is actually witnessed by so many people. They don't necessarily are the same thing. So I think it's really important to make sure that they are getting through every crime, because we have had in the past, through poor crime recording, victims not getting justice because it hadn't been recorded properly and they're not getting an outcome. So it's absolutely critical that crime is recorded correctly. And they've been working really hard to get that improved, but it takes every single police officer and police staff involved in the organisation to actually record crime properly, because somebody may tell them something in passing. If someone tells them something in passing, they still have to record that. So it's quite a bureaucratic process as well, but it might be something you want to understand a little bit better to help give you some assurance that we do take it seriously. Mandy.
Thank you. Mine was on pretty much the same subject. This got brought up on Wednesday at the Councillor Advocate Day. Sometimes there's 4 or 5 different systems that have to be entered into. But looking at this and listening to Councillor Pember, these points and the points you've raised, the bit that is the most important is about the victim getting justice. Now, if crimes are not recorded accurately, all you need is some smart aleck barrister or whoever can get somebody off a crime, because due process, going back to that lovely word process, has not been carried out. And that is really sad when that happens, because in effect, not intentionally, somebody has been able to get off a crime because something's not in the right box. And actually, morally, that's wrong. But unfortunately, in law, it's correct. So I really would like to see that figure go up, and for officers really to have emphasised because the officer themselves can put in their heart and soul into an investigation. It might pique their conscience, whatever, something that they actually really believe in, whatever, and then through one simple administrative mistake, somebody can get off crime. And that's where I'd really like to see that figure increased. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm hoping I've said it right. Hodgetts? No? I'm going to have some practice over the weekend.
We're pretty good on that. You can call me Jay if you like, if that's easier. Just going back to the recording crime, I think also what's very important is that hate crimes and such like that are tagged as soon as possible in the process, because I have sat on hate crime scrutiny panels and that has often been missed when it should have been picked up earlier. And so I think that's quite important to think about.
Thank you, Chair. I will just add, though, it is the perception of the victim as to whether it's a hate crime. So it could be a hate crime, but they don't perceive it as a hate crime at that point. So that's why sometimes there is a bit of a lag until the police really understand what's happened and try and establish if they've been targeted for a particular reason. So it's a self-identifying flag, the hate crime. The victim has to say, I believe I've been targeted because of X, Y, or Z. The police don't naturally ask that on an ordinary crime unless the victim is perceiving it as such. So there is, there's an element of a victim being aware. I mean, all you're doing is generally just reporting an assault, a public order offence, some antisocial behaviour, and you may not be thinking that it is a hate crime. So there is an element of it being important that the public understand what a hate crime is as well. And so that's why there's quite a lot of conversations around encouraging people, particularly because the two highest areas of hate crime, just for your awareness, Chair, is related to race and then sexuality. Those are the bulk of the hate crimes that we get.
Thank you. I've got 3 more, and I'm not taking any more after that. So, Caroline Jones, please. Next.
Thank you, Chair. I was just looking at some of the information you've got, especially around the drug offences in particular. But it's just, as I was thinking about it, I was thinking across the whole of the work that you do, I would find it really interesting, and I know that some of my colleagues in Cornwall and probably across Devon as well, I'm quite interested in when young people are offending. And so a lot of this information feels very adult. Yeah. So if we look at drug offences, and we know that, predominantly they are committed, especially the trafficking of drugs, county lines are normally committed by adults, but actually we've got a lot of young people who are groomed, who then go on to criminal exploitation for themselves. So I personally would be really interested if some of these figures could be broken down, because if we're looking at trying to disrupt drugs misuse, we also need to look at the cause. So how are they getting hold of young people? And that link with the partnerships around education and supporting young people to take a different view around drugs. So I would be interested, if some of those figures could be broken down and we could see where young people are offending and in what areas. So maybe that could be targeted in a slightly different way. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. What will be helpful is the themes in the plan. I will be bringing a more detailed profile to panel like we did before, with a lot more of the breakdown and information around that area. The first one I'm bringing is on theft, specifically looking at shoplifting, but that will be probably September's panel. I'm hoping to bring that, Chair, so that you've got some detail, a lot more detail around it. We'll do a drugs and alcohol one as well, and we'll bring that before you as a much more detailed profile of the issues.
Thank you, and thank you for that report. Mine probably touches on actually what you've just said, Alison, around the detailed report. So it would be remiss of me with my sort of female hat on. Obviously, you've got the violence against persons. Is there a way that we could be breaking that down to violence against women and young girls? Because obviously it's very generic. So would that be a more detailed talk? So it touches on what Mandy's saying around the breakdown of the figures, really. So would that be coming back to us in September, or are we very much being generic about the person, is my question.
There's a couple of elements here. There's what is published in the public domain, the very high level figures that I am, holding the chief to account to help deliver on. And then there's everything else that we see within policing and the information reports that I get. Again, when I bring the violence profile, we'll make sure that it breaks that down in relation to violence against women and girls. I've got my disruption workshop next week, where we've invited a number of people to come along, and I'll be promoting it online for people to be able to push their ideas to me. I want radical ideas and solutions to tackling male violence against women and girls. And if anyone's got any ideas, I don't care how radical it is, how absolutely off the wall it is, we need to consider everything, because it is constantly increasing. We don't seem to be getting on top of it, and doing more of what we already do doesn't seem to solve it. So I will make sure when we bring that profile that we bring that information.
And our final speaker is Councillor Billings.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be very brief. Commissioner, I just wondered whether it's worth acknowledging somewhere in this, or in a wider context, that some of the very important work that the officers do isn't specifically in relation to crime. I mean, for example, if we think to the question that was raised at the very beginning, many people would have anticipated trespass would be a criminal offence, it's a civil one, and hence unauthorised encampments, much of that. And I just wondered whether in future iterations of this, the office could think about ways of referring to that work, some of which, to say, the huge partnership support that the teams are providing, which isn't specifically criminal issues, it's not preventing crime, it's possibly sort of a few steps beyond that, for example, to try to avoid circumstances where it might come forward in a later date. I'll leave it at that, Chair.
Chair, if I can just refer Councillor Billings to, I'll just try and find it in here, page 78, if you've got it on the top, page 78. These are, there's the day-to-day performance of the police that happens regardless. The police and crime plan, which your role as this panel is to scrutinise me on the delivery of that plan, and you can see that those are the measures and the areas. So some are performance statistics, some are actions, but those are the things that I'm aiming to deliver with this police and crime plan. So that is what I will be bringing before you more than anything else in relation, so that you can scrutinise me as to whether I'm actually being able to deliver it. So there is some fantastic work going on, and I have to say, Torbay Council, Swissco and Torbay Police have been outstanding in the way that they've worked operationally together. I'm not going to say it's just because I went and focused on Torquay and created the operational relationships to occur, but absolutely outstanding. Councillor Billings has led real improvement of how we're dealing with unauthorised encampments in Torbay, and I think you again held up for good practice in relation to that as a local authority. So I think let's try and get some of the good practice recognised in my update report. I think we need to do that, and in the annual report, and then continue to share through councillor advocates how we're doing things in our different areas.
Okay. And once again, this report is to note. Is panel members happy to note? Yeah, thank you. Okay, moving on to item 11 on non-criminal complaints against the Police and Crime Commissioner. And I'd like to hand over to the Commissioner's Chief Exec, Fran, please.
Thank you, Chair. Relatively straightforward. There have been two since the beginning of January. Both have been resolved in consultation with yourself. No outstanding issues.
Councillor Devon.
Thank you, Chairman. As a new councillor to this, what is the point of this report? It tells us absolutely nothing. So, is 2 complaints a regular occurrence for a 6-month? Have we, what's the tracking back? Is it normally 20 complaints and this is less? Is it normally 0 and it's more? What were the thrust of the complaints? What's the context for the complaints? And how were they resolved? Was it me complaining about not getting a response in 20 days from the office and then getting a response back saying, no, I'm not coming to visit you? Or, what is it? Thank you.
Thank you. It's probably worth just tracking back on a little bit of process, Chair, if that's okay, around these complaints, because your arrangements for this panel actually give some delegation to me as the Chief Executive, but actually it's all dealt with through the Chair of this panel. So that's something that you might want to take away with the Chair afterwards about what that process is. So the duty is to report them, but to give you reassurance, 2 in a 6-month period is, I wouldn't say average, but it's sort of that number. Sometimes it's none at all. Both of these relate to comments that a member of the public has raised in the media, 2 separate ones that were dealt with the Chair, and through the Chair's direction through to me have given a response back to the complainant. But the detail about those reports, I think you'd need to talk to the Chair about.
Councillor Chairman, I'm quite happy outside of this meeting we can have a conversation of where panel members can have their input or not input, whatever our legal requirement is. But we'll have that conversation outside this meeting if that's okay with you. All right, because I totally understand any new panel members sitting or anybody who subs, it is just, you know, a wasted piece of paper, to be honest with you, because you don't have any context of it. So I'm asking you to look at it, and if you've got any questions, but you can't make a question if you don't know the substance of it. So I think it's something that we do need to go away and have a look at. Okay. Our panel members are happy if we take that away and have a look and see how we can become more joined up in our thinking. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. So I'm going to ask you again just to note that. And then if the panel members are happy, I'm seeing nodded heads, we're going to go on to item 12, please. That's our tracking decisions. Do panel members have any questions on the tracking? Councillor Loudon.
Thank you, Chair. This may straddle 12 and 13, and I did raise this in the pre-mix. So I'm going back to our meeting of the 22nd of November, and we made 2 decisions at minute 21. The second one said, request the Chair and Vice Chair, in consultation with the host authority and the OPCC, ensure an agreed clear process for future appointments was agreed at the next meeting of the panel. That is outstanding. I would ask that we bring it to the next meeting on the 12th of September. So whether it has to go into action log as well as the work programme, I leave that up to Jake to determine. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. We'll keep it in the action log and progress it rapidly.
All right. Do I have anyone else that wants to move on? No. Okay. So we're on item 13, which is our work programme. I've just, throughout the meeting, just been picking up a few bits. You can see our work programme in front of you. I think, you know, personally, I would like to look at new stations throughout Devon and Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly. So, you know, I've been bringing to panel, as the Commissioner will know, for umpteen years now about the state of our stations. So I think I would like to do a bit of a work programme on that. Also, I picked up regarding Barry Jones about your complaints. I don't know if we want to do a little bit of work on that. And the other one was a deep dive in reporting crime that Councillor Penberthy brought up. Is there anything there that you don't want or you do want?
Thank you, Chair. Between you coughing and me sniffing and snuffling, we're a right pair, aren't we? Yeah, I think I like all of those suggestions. I just wondered, because there's been a number of comments about the Commissioner's scrutinies, whether we should have a standing item on the agenda for the Commissioner to report back on the scrutiny she's done, because those might then inform future work programmes. So because that would at least then give us the links to the public reports. We'd know they were there and were easy to find, and would give us a bit more. So just as a standing item, that might be useful. I know the Commissioner's plan had been developed before the riots of last August, and the government's concerned that those might recur, and I desperately hope not, but we are seeing rising hate crime. I just wondered whether we could make sure that during the course of this year that we did do another review of hate crime, as it isn't included in the police and crime plan, and I think that would be really important. We've talked today about neighbourhood and community policing and the impact of what government is doing. I wonder whether it's worth us having a session a bit on neighbourhood and community policing, whether it's a small village or an inner city nightlife area. Those are implications that we all face, and I think it would be good for us to understand direction of travel at a strategic level. And one that I didn't raise today but links to ASB, and actually the Commissioner did mention the whole issue of noise. The whole thing of noisy vehicles gets talked about here quite a lot, and I just wondered whether it's worth us putting how we deal with noisy vehicles. Because it's noise, we get told it's the council, but it's only noise because the vehicles are moving, which then is a police issue. And last night there were 12 motorbikes on Knott Street. The one in the middle was doing wheelies. I couldn't have caught their registration number, but they were all revving their engines. Individually, they might have all been all right. As a group, and Thursdays in Plymouth is bike night. But we all know that there's these car racing circuits, there's the souped-up cars. It has a massive impact on people, but no one really knows how to deal with it. I think that might be a useful one for us to look at some point, because it actually impacts on all of our communities. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Jay.
Thank you. I'd just like to reinforce your point there about hate crime and really digging down into that, and perhaps extend that a little bit wider into looking at equalities legislation and that whole area of work as well, into this work plan somewhere.
Anything else? Oh, sorry, Councillor Billings.
Thank you, Chair. You're addressing other people in first name. Please feel free to call me Adam, it's fine. I just wonder whether it would be helpful to recap through this meeting or a work plan the best practice topics that have been raised at the advocates' meetings. It seems to me there's a slight disconnect. If we're trying to share best practice in another forum, not to at least even bring back the topics and the outcomes to this meeting. And if I take, for example, one topic that the Commissioner raised that's close to my heart, unauthorised encampments, I'd love all councils and all elected members in this area to have the opportunity to understand what might have worked well in my area, just as much as I'd love to understand with my colleague in Plymouth what's worked well in his area on a different topic. And I think we need to bring those topics back, and I don't quite get the feeling we're doing that at the moment, if I may, Chair.
And I'm very grateful for that. Normally, over the last year, our work programme has just followed on, and we've not had any suggestions, hence why I was making suggestions today. But I'm more than happy to look at that. When you look at some stuff that was done at your last performance, I can only talk about it because obviously it's my portfolio that took there. There's some really good work that best practice could work throughout. So, certainly took on board. Anybody else? No. I'm going to say thank you, and for all your contribution today. And I will close the meeting. The next meeting will be on the 12th of September. So thank you very much. Thank you. Oh, sorry, Mandy. What's the matter?
I was going to ask, Jake sent within the letters for today about training. I was wondering if anything more was going to be said about that.
So I was going to close the meeting, and what I was going to suggest, Mandy, was that we've talked an awful lot about the budget, a lot of new and existing members coming up for budget. Is a different way that we work compared to our councils for the budget here. And I was going to suggest that maybe we looked at some training, Jake, for the budget coming forward, and also if there was any training that any members wanted for panel that we could arrange, please, to support people through their agenda.
complaints that Julian brought up, how they're looked at and things. And I mean, I've been here for 2 years and we've had no training. So I think, you know, it's something that's incumbent on us as an overview and scrutiny of the Police Crime Commissioner's role and her office, that actually we should have training occasionally.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. We are organising an external facilitator to come in early September to deliver training to panel members.
Yeah. In the diary, very quickly, as Sally said earlier about the Councillor Advocate Day, you know, our diaries get really booked up. My September is practically gone and moved into October as well. So, you know, the earlier we can get a date, the better, please.
We'll move at pace and get the dates to you quickly.
Yeah.
Mandy, we were trying out different things because I know in the past, you know, the Commissioner's team have brought, you know, up to Plymouth, have brought training. We've put on, you know, lots of stuff. And I think there was 2 members that turned up. We were a bit, you know, left on our own. So, Fran, did you want to come in regarding training?
Yeah, if I could, just to clarify that obviously the Secretariat's function is the training, but that our office is more than happy to support. And I think if you are bringing in an external facilitator, I think Nikki and I as statutory officers would be more than happy to support some of that, because generic training is one thing. Every police and crime panel operates slightly different. So if we can help with the local context, we'd be more than happy to do that.
Presumably, as with council meetings, to note is very poor practice, so perhaps we can think about that in our training. Thank you.
Sally, if you want people to turn up to training sessions, charge them.
Charge. Okay, all right, thank you. All right, Councillor Loudon, go on.
It's slightly different. Two points. One is I don't recall Jake saying in public the change that's gone on in democratic services. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is, are we not live streamed?
We are, and I will apologise straight away, because obviously we've had a little bit of a mishap there right at the beginning, because normally I would normally say that we're obviously live streamed, and secondly, obviously we started a little bit later as well because of the chair and the vice chair thing. So I do apologise. My fault.
No, it's just that in the past, maybe I'm misremembering. I thought we had our photographs kept up. Did the cameras not pick us up? Am I misremembering?
No, you might be thinking of a full council. I know in full council, maybe, but
I'm
not.
Misremembering.
It might be in your council, but we've never live streamed from up here, because if you're thinking of it before, when we've had the commissioner and the commissioner has brought presentations, we've watched her presentations through the screen. But my apologies, I should have reminded everybody that you are on live screening. All right, okay. All right, everyone finished? So anyone who hasn't been with us before, it would be good. Is it the Warspite room? Yep. Downstairs is some lunch that you're able to either stay and eat and mingle, or please feel free if you want to take away with you. Okay? But once again, thank you for your support, and I